Hi, it's Will from stormthecastle.com, and this is part 7 of the Sculpting Fantasy Miniatures tutorial. And we're going to get into some real good stuff here in part 7. We're going to actually put armor on this guy, and that'll be a lot of fun. Before you start putting armor on, I wanted to mention something, is that I've drawn some concept art for what I wanted to do. You can't just start putting armor, you're going to know what you want. So I drew a couple of drawings to show what I'm going to have on this guy, and then I can refer to the drawings, and I will pop the drawings in for you to look at in a sec. What I'm going to put on him for sure is a helmet, a Viking helmet. Okay, we're back. Now, let's see if we can get a closer look at this through the magnifying lens. So I think that works pretty good, and this is what I will be using a lot of to work with, but not for footage. So the first thing I'm going to do is put that helmet on this guy up here. It'll go across here like this, and you saw the concept art, so you know how I'm going to do it. Now the little horns that come out the sides are going to be kind of tough, so I'm going to actually wire them in. I'm going to put wires in those horns and then plug them in, and that'll make it sturdier, and it'll be so they won't fall, because those are pretty small details that are sticking out there. So the first thing you got to do here is you got to get yourself some of your clay, and you know I'm using Super Sculpey, right? And then we'll just get it nice and soft like this. And now what I like to do is, with a razor knife, cut myself off some really small pieces. What I do is, and I will place those pieces right on this guy's head. See that? See that? Now I've got to form that down, continue it all the way around its head, and it's a little low. I think I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Maybe to there, yeah. And this is just up front. See, his head's a little bobby there. I should have put probably the armature a little bit longer. I might even have considered popping the armature right out of the top of his head, so I have plenty of armature. But let's continue. See that? And I can actually, I don't know if you noticed that, but see, you just use a very thin tool, and you can stick it on the way you want. There we go. Now I'm starting to make the shape of his helmet, of his Viking helmet. Now what I'll do is I'll make the actual, you saw the concept art, it's actually kind of like a cup that sits on his head, and I will form that and get that shape right, and then I will add the bands on top of it with using very thin pieces of clay, and the bands that go across, and the band that goes up, and then finally I will add the horns. Now it's just not practical for me to show you everything I do, because this is going to actually, this process is going to take me, just for the helmet it's probably going to take me an hour or two. So I'm going to have to cut in and out, but I will show you parts as I do it. So the next thing I'm going to show you is, now I want to make sure this stays secure. So you got to make sure you press that down well so it stays secure on his head. You don't want it falling off. And then what I will do is I will continue to flesh this out, and then I will cut this line so it's very neat, and it makes a very nice shape all the way around his head, and you'll see it. So I'm going to come back when I've got the bowl, just the bowl, and none of the details on it, put on his head. And you can. Okay. Okay, this helmet is almost done. I wanted to show you a technique that I'm using to get it to look like metal. Metal is very, very uniform. There's no wrinkles in it or lines in it, and you can see I have some little bumps and ridges here. So what I'm doing is I'm using the side of a knife to slowly blend all of that like this. I'm tamping it down to work on my shape and to get it into a very uniform and very smooth metal shape. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that technique. Use the side of a knife, an X-Acto knife, and continue to work at that until there are no wrinkle lines or any creases, so it's a nice metal, has a nice. Here's a couple of quick tips for you when you're working on this, when you're doing the fine detail on a sculpture, is you make sure you always knead it really well so it's nice and soft. The warmth of your hands and the oil from your hands will soften that up really nice. And you can roll it into balls, you can roll it into oblongs, any kind of shape. And you can use this, see how I rolled this, take your time, make this nice and uniform. And then you can, use your knife to actually, do things like I can slice this and then make a little tiny, see that? Now that's a little tiny, it can be a little piece of jewelry or a medallion or something like that. And you want to do larger sections, try something like this. I'll slice this. See how beautiful that comes out? And that's got a nice, and then you can slice yourself a thin slice of that. So, and I like these little really thin slices because they have a nice look to them. And then you can apply this to your model, to your miniature, and work with it. And it's thin. So, okay, I'm making the actual bands that go on the helmet, and I'll show you a little trick that I've got here. I'm rolling out some of the clay like this, almost like a rolling pin, and making it nice and thin. And I continue to stretch it out and take your time so it doesn't crack. If you kneaded it really well ahead of time, it'll stay nice and uniform. So now let's cut ourselves a band here. And that might be long enough to go all the way around the helmet. I'm not sure. If not, I can add. I think I may still be a little too thick. So maybe I'll roll that a little bit more, make it thinner. Beautiful. It's a little big, a little thick, but not bad at all. Okay, now I've got to, I'll take a look. It's a little thick. I think I should thin it. I'm going to thin it out a little bit, and I'm going to put a band horizontally here. All right, put some rivets in it, and then I'll show you that, and then I will put the horns. Okay, now I'm starting on the horns, and I wanted to show you real quick. The horns are mounted into the helmet with a like a metal collar. So what I did was I made this two little discs. See this little tiny disc? And I'll mount those discs like this. One there and one here. And it will. Okay, now let's put the spike on. I used a smaller piece of copper wire there. I inserted it right in the top. And now I put the spike right on top of that. And there we have it. So, the helmet is almost done. I'm going to do a little bit of tweaking on it, and then we're going to move on to chainmail.